All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our ongoing reading of Nietzsche and the Vicious Circle. Apologies for taking a little bit of time off. Once in a while, I do that. It's been a few years, so it's kind of weird to get back into the groove. And trying to get going this morning has been a journey. Okay, where do we even start? We've been going through and building out what the phantasm and simulacrum are. Which is itself, I would argue, a pretty significant fucking journey as a thing. This subsection of the entire book is this subsection of this chapter specifically is a bit of a turn, because everything that we've been talking about to this point, up until chapter 6, has been a lot of conversations around sort of the machinery of things. The way things work, the process of things. Now, we're going to be making our way to a political large-scale move here, rather than focusing on the molecular and small and individual and tiny. It's going to become a much larger thing as we sort of set up, because we've been talking about the imposter philosopher. And the imposter philosopher, which is a phrase he uses with all the intended pain, is going to be being built and has been being built, sort of discussing the parts of us as we move towards I would argue, a little bit of the will to truth, and the types of will to power that exist within Nietzsche. So I'm jazzed for it. We're just going to kind of jump in and just start making our way through the whole thing. Hopefully I can remember how to use this setup, and that'll be the jam. Cool? Cool. Let me make sure I've got Discord up. All right. All right. So we'll begin. We're at the bottom of, I believe, 133 for those who are reading along at home. But as such, the phantasm cannot have any meaning outside the time of the intellect, outside its dimensions. Something monstrous that takes shape only through a delimitation of the non-comprehensible. For the intellect is a function of continuity, from cause to effect, is for the phantasm something without any preconditions, a gesture, an action, an event of which the phantasm is the residue, having at the same time the value of a gesture, an action, an event already accomplished or yet to come. Now, there is only one mediator that can say what a phantasm wills. Through its conventional procedures, art essentially reconstitutes in its own figures the conditions that have constituted the phantasm, namely the intensities of the impulses. The simulacrum, in relation to the intellect, is the license that the latter concedes to art, a ludic suspension of the reality principle. Whew. It's going to be a bunch here. There's going to be a lot here to go through. There's going to be a lot. We'll start with the first bit. As such, the phantasm cannot have any meaning outside the time of the intellect and its dimensions. Well, we're just going to go right from here. Actually, one sec. Let me clear that. Let's zoom in a little bit and get it a little bigger for everyone. There we go. Happy day. Phantasm is the same as signs we read about in AO? No. So I'm gonna avoid using terminology from AO here because it will become confused, because Deleuze and Guattari in AO are fundamentally like reassigning what sign means in any way. So if I were to start referring to things as signs or placing it in that register, it's going to become layers upon layers of troublesome. Here we're talking about phantasms. Remember, it's impulses are the sort of the layers of the waves of things, the energy in the wave, all the different sort of interference patterns and energy signatures that are constantly moving. colliding, doing things. The phantasm is the evocative image image that is sort of brought up. And again, image not like photo, but image more as sort of the thing that is pre-specific thought. And then in order to make that image communicable, we create words that are not exactly that. We play with the simulacra of those things, more or less. We're going to be going through all this here very, very quickly, but that's kind of the idea. So he says, outside of the time of the intellect, outside its dimensions, something monstrous that takes shape only through a delimitation of the non-comprehensible. Okay. As I said, the phantasm is this obsessional image that boils up out of the drives of the impulses. It is not something that is chosen. It's not something you choose as a thing. It's something that seizes you, that you feel like take control of you. I hope people understand that. This should be a fairly human, normal thing. This is like one of those human condition things. This is that's the thing. The intellect is very much in opposition to this. It is on the other pole of this two-sided setup. Okay. Your conscious existence that uses signs, that understands cause and effect. Oh yes, of course. I placed my hand on that hot pot and it burned my hand. Oh, that's because cause and effect. This thing is a process of taking the churn of the unstable and of the uncommunicable into the communicable. That's what the intellect does. It gives you an understanding of things. It lets you understand things in terms of a generalized consistency. And also communication. Communication's a really fucking big one too. Communication's a big one. That's the other part of it. Klossowski's claim here is that the phantasms have no meaning unto themselves. Hic et nunc. Here and now, where it is. There's no meaning of its own. A phantasm only acquires meaning when the intellect cuts around it. Right? That understanding of the phantasm, that border that is created, that territory that is placed, creates within that space the meaning that the phantasm now has. It's an effect of the carving, not of the phantasm. Yes, so it's an effect of the phantasm. The phantasm, in this sense, and that's the phrasing, something monstrous that takes shape only through a delimitation of the non-comprehensible. It's a lot of like really good words for Scrabble, but that's the idea. The phantasm takes shape due to being delimited within the non-comprehensible. The non-comprehensible is the mass of everything. It's not comprehensible. A border is cut into it and it's delimited. The non-comprehensible is delimited, and that monstrous thing is now taking shape. The fence makes the yard. What is a yard? Well, the fence sets it up. The same way, the carving creates the phantasm. It doesn't have meaning itself. It's meaningless at that point. On YouTube, nope, not Gestalt, Sandy. You're getting close, but it's not going to be Gestalt. Trust me, like Klossowski will not be using Gestalt here. Yeah, I think that, yeah, that's, I mean, the important phrasing, to be very specific, is something monstrous that takes shape only through a delimitation of the non-comprehensible. The non-comprehensible is the big play there, right? One sec, let me silence the phone. Sandy says it has meaning because we give it meaning. Perception, culture, knows priming through various meaning. No, that again is outside of experience. As as we say things, like literally in the moments as I'm saying things, it doesn't have meaning before or after. I, through how I speak, carve. I am carving the world as I speak, and you are carving it as you grasp. The carving that is happening of the world imminently is what is giving it its meaning. It doesn't say, oh, it's this is the meaning for that because it's over there somewhere outside. This is within experience. It's 100% within experience. You'll get that in the next 2 paragraphs. He's going to say it a lot more clearly. Well, actually, this one's a pretty good one. JK says, is the phantasm part of the unconscious as opposed to the intellect? Yes. Depending on how you want to use that, I'm hesitant because Klossowski is, I don't actually know if he ever says it's part of the unconscious directly. I think he speaks of it in that way, that it is pre-conscious. It is not something we are wholly aware of. It is something that takes control of us. The intellect is our attempt to take control back, and thus we have the collision thing as a thing. Caleb asks, is it my birthday? It was 2 days ago. That's what this is. So big old 4-6. Big old 4-6. What for the intellect is a function of continuity from cause to effect is for the phantasm something without any preconditions. I'm going to actually stop there because the second part is a lot to sort of take on as a thing. Again, these are processes that are happening, I don't want to say in parallel, but alongside each other. We're talking about, again, the immanence of the creation of the now and the moment, and the intellect on one side is a function of continuity, right? The intellect as such thinks in chains, connects the thing before to the thing now, to the thing that followed it, to the thing that will follow it. The phantasm doesn't have this. The phantasm doesn't have a chainology, you could say. Like, that's not its setup. They're about to say he's about to say what that went. Fuck it, let's go. For the phantasm, a gesture, an action, an event of which the phantasm is the residue, having at the same time the value of a gesture, an action, an event already accomplished or yet to come. The phantasm doesn't live in ordinary before or after time. The time as we understand it, where things used to be, things will be. It doesn't have that under thing, right? The phrase, a gesture, an action, an event of which the phantasm is the residue. It is those things, right? It is the residue of those things. It's the residue of them, the phrasing. They're already accomplished. They are also yet to come as a thing. So we have this process the intellect has. We have this process that the intellect has of sort of layering itself onto it, of creating sequentiality, or the chain existence imposed onto it from outside of it. The phantasm is doing whatever it is. The impulses are doing whatever they do, but the intellect deforms the phantasm and gives it a trying to say what it's saying, right? What it's trying to do. Oh, well, that was just hunger. It forces timeless intensity that exists outside of that into a particular timeline of causation and result, of cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. Now there is only one mediator who can say what a phantasm wills. Through its conventional procedures, art essentially reconstitutes in its own figures the conditions that have reconstituted the phantasm, namely the intensities of the impulses. I like this a lot. The very short version of what he's saying here is that the intellect is not the thing that is able to actually grant us what the phantasm is willing. It's art does this. Art does that. Now, art doesn't do that like via magic, right? That's not the setup as the thing. Art isn't decoding or explaining the phantasm. That's not what it really does. It is instead the phrasing that they have here. The phrasing he has written here, I'm going to try to be very particular here. Art essentially reconstitutes in its own figures the conditions that have constituted the phantasm, namely, namely the intensities of the impulses. It's reconstituting the intensities of the impulses in the experience of art. Art is connecting to these things. Art is almost directly restaging the energy of the phantasm as it exists. Art doesn't really give you a message. You can interpret art a lot of different, but it's not like saying, "Oh yeah, no, it's that's love." That'd be terrible. No, there's complexity and unnamables and it's being restaged in this way. It's being restaged very specifically in this way. That's what he says. And he kind of ends it. The simulacrum in relation to the intellect is the license that the latter concedes to art, a ludic suspension of the reality principle. So now we have the simulacrum. Okay, this is the third element. We have the intellect, we have phantasm, we have impulses, and now simulacrum. Simulacrum is something that is made, a willed element or object that is there to imitate a phantasm. And this can take a lot of shapes, but here specifically, he's talking about it in, I think, a really fascinating way to sort of talk through like the imagery of the thing. And when I say imagery, I mean more vivid actual imagery, poetry, paintings, deliberately staged imagery as a thing. The intellect as a thing grants art the license. The simulacrum in relation to the intellect is the license that the latter concedes to art, that the intellect concedes to art. Right? A ludic suspension of the reality principle. Ludic meaning of play. Homo Ludens, probably the easiest book on this to sort of understand what play means in this sense, but it's like how a child plays with toys. It's literally just sort of free form play of the thing. To call it a ludic suspension of the reality principle is crazy. This means that, and it's like 9 fucking words, and it's like just the demand that the mind bend to external reality and defer satisfaction. A ludic suspension of the reality principle. So, to say another way, art is a roped off playground where the rules of the real and the way reality works can be completely suspended. However, it is only within those ropes that this happens. Reality principle is a Freudian term. It's a psychoanalytic term. That's not Nietzsche. He's pulling in from psychoanalysis here. And he's bringing in sort of a psychoanalytic frame to add to Nietzsche's sort of setup. There's some odd interplays there, but the big thing is the way that you understand how reality works. And this is Deleuze writes this in Logic of Sense, I think, extremely well. Again, Homo Ludens is really good on this. Anti-Oedipus goes into this. But the way that people play, the first thing you do is you actually close off and specify where chance is allowed. Think of World Cup's going right now. Think of all of the different things that, and I used to joke about this, like FIFA is like the most corrupt organization on the fucking planet, hilariously, overtly corrupt. And everyone who loves football knows this. Every single person knows this. No one's like, oh yeah, no, I love FIFA. Everyone hates FIFA. They love the game and the sport. Because there's a really hilarious thing that, despite that, football, soccer, whatever, I'm American, the edges of the match, the pitch, are closed. The rules are incredibly specific about the type of clothes that you can wear, the type of shoes, how you can move, where you can be, what can be done. All of these things are there to close out chance, to allow play inside of increasingly smaller and smaller areas, to denote where skill can be grown and mastery can be grown. This is a core idea of ludic theory. This is what games are. Video games, the same thing. It's done via code. Board games, same thing. The rules are there to close off the chance and nightmare that the rest of the world has, because the rest of the world is unstructured and terrifying. But if I'm playing Boggle, or if I'm playing Sorry, or if I'm playing Monopoly, or Chutes and Ladders, it doesn't matter. I've closed off everything. I've done everything I can to close off. Art does the same thing. It's closing off everything to what's in the painting. And it's a suspension of the understanding we have of reality to enable us to play inside of a very, very specific thing. Very specific thing. That allows us to, again, play inside of that sort of underlying thing. Then that's more or less this paragraph. Sorry for the ramble. There's some psychoanalysis stuff in here. There's going to be a lot of that in almost all that we read. Freud and Lacan were just simply too informative and interesting and had too many interesting theories not to have them played with, at least in some way. Is there any more writing on art from a similar angle as here? There is a ton. The Logic of Sensation by Gilles Deleuze is basically about this. It goes through Francis Bacon's art and talks through figura and how they sort of work into that. Particularly on art. Give me 2 seconds. That's probably going to be, I mean, it's just such a good specific thing. Homo Ludens goes into art on that sense as well, which is very good. There's not a ton that's in the direction of sort of play as a thing, though. Yeah, I'd say it's tougher. There's a handful of interesting books that sort of talk about how there's the Art Machine, Gilles Deleuze and the art machines, I think it's called. I need to find it. I'll go through and I'll find a couple. It's good. It's good stuff. Folks, do reading those books on art and richer experience of it, or run the risk of ruining it? Good art can't be ruined for you no matter what. And I just am going to use my personal experience. I hate Star Wars because I worked at Lucasfilm for 4.5 years and I got to see how the sausage was made. It doesn't change how good A New Hope is. I worked on Avatar. Avatar is still a roller coaster. There's a lot. That's not really true, but okay. What's not really true? That I worked at Luke? I'm confused, LJ.
No. Like, no matter how, what did you say? Like, art cannot be ruined no matter what if it's good.
In that specific way he's talking about it. Yeah.
Okay. You know what? Yeah, that's probably right, actually.
Yeah, I mean, art can be ruined. Like, there's a lot of things that can ruin art. Like, you find out that I adore a handful of songs that are written by a guy who totally banged children famously. You know, Michael Jackson's Michael Jackson. And it can fuck up the art experience for you when it turns out that he's a kid diddler. Yeah, I get that. But you know that. What Anton's asking is, reading these books, diving into how art works, as you understand more and more how the sausage is made, does it ruin art? And in my experience, I've only ever found it actually enrich my ability to appreciate good art and enjoy it on a depth that's really, really powerful. But it does ruin it for mediocre stuff, because there are a lot of people in art communities who don't try to like actually build anything new. They are just doing the tropes because they learn about the tropes and they do those things. And then once you see that, you're like, oh shit, I recognize it. Ugh. Yeah, that's a fucking good line. You can't really know how it's made if it is art. That's a great way to put it. Yeah, Dark. Art Machines by Anne, and I will never pronounce her last name correct. Savanyarguas. Art Machines. Really, really good. Interesting read. Really interesting read. Art's art. Viktor Frankl used mist to explain the importance of men's struggles, to give the unavoidable struggles and meaning. Frankl's got some interesting stuff. If you start to notice patterns, tropes in great art, it's less of a risk. The patterns and tropes that you will begin to recognize lead to other things that become more confusing. There isn't really a point where you actually are able to fully grasp what great art is and close it in. Not in that sense. But commercial stuff, you can absolutely see. There's a reason I go to the store now, and I have kids. We walk up and down the toy aisle at Walmart, and there's the Star Wars section. And all I can think in my head is the year that Hasbro didn't sell a whole bunch of Christmas-themed Darth Vaders, so they just dipped them in pink fucking paint and resold them as Valentine's ones, and they sold out. That shit breaks you. Like, that's where you're like, oh my God, the capitalist side of all of this is so fucking ruthless. But art, good art, like I have walked over weird, like minimalist, brutalist. There's a guy who lays down squares of metal. That's his thing. And it seems stupid until you do it and you walk over it. And his whole point was it's transformative. It's not a detour. That's the point. The point here is that art is doing its thing. Art essentially reconstitutes in its own figures the conditions that have constituted the phantasm. It doesn't actually deal with purely the intellect. That's not art. Art doesn't just deal with the intellect. Art deals with the next step down. It's things that are constituted in ways that are not able to be intellectualized fundamentally. That's the point. And we're going to be going that the lead up to this is to make the way to the back to the imposter philosopher we've talked about before. We'll get into what that is again here shortly. But the thing that the philosopher does with this capacity that the phantasm has to expand itself and to play with itself everywhere in that way. That's the idea. So we'll actually, short little cute little paragraph. Let's do it. But here we see that under the pretext of modifying human behavior with regards to the real, the imposter philosopher sets out to experiment with the license of the simulacrum in every domain of thought and existence, using the methods of science. To abolish the principle of so-called reality, it is enough to draw the final consequences of physiology, even if this means denouncing the mystifying monopoly of the intellect, whose censure still keeps the methods of science within the limits of this principle. He's just... I will never write anything as good as any of this shit, and it's just amazing to me. Makes it wonderful. Bit by bit, I guess we make our way through it. I don't know. I think that's going to be the best bet. Start at the top, but here we see... Why did it shrink? Fuck you. No. No, Meta Horizon link. Headphones. What the fuck? I hate Google. I hate Meta. I hate all these companies. But here we see that under the pretext. One sec. Meta is trying to install something right now. It's installing a driver for some reason that it wasn't prompted to do. That's fun. I have a VR headset. Just so you know. That's a thing. Apparently it decided to turn on, do an update while connected to the computer, which it is, and now it's trying to install new drivers. Woohoo. Whatever. Let's continue. But here we see that under the pretext of modifying human behavior with regard to the real, the imposter philosopher sets out to experiment with the license of the simulacrum in every domain of thought and existence using the methods of science. Okay. So, the art gives a license. Art gives a license to the imposter philosopher to be inside of the sandbox, inside of the playroom, inside of the magic circle of play. And that imposter philosopher takes what's in there and tries to throw it outside, to extend it to everywhere in life. This is, by the way, a really beautiful sentiment I really, really, really like. But what's interesting is the phrasing. I want to be there's so much said here. I want to be very specific of the phrasing here, because it's using the using the methods of science is okay. So art allows play for the phantasm and interactivity within a very square, specific realm. There's a sandbox, closed-in room. In game development, you call it the magic circle. It's where people are enabled to play, and outside of it, they cannot. And the imposter philosopher comes in and, using the methods of science, takes everything that the way that the license of art enabled him to be there and starts throwing it outside, everywhere. Like all thought, all life, everywhere. And the methods of science is the way this is done, right? Because we're not talking about playing pretend within the frame of art itself. That would be one thing. That would be more or less pantomiming or playing the game along with it. This is staying inside of a very specific representational space, where a space is being represented and you are representing it back. You're staying within the realm of the charade itself, but throwing things outside, utilizing science, utilizing the intellect. The cover story, the cover story that's used here, the pretext, is the modifying of human behavior with regard to the real, is actually reforming how people act. The aim of this imposter philosopher is to abolish the reality principle itself. That's the idea. That we abolish the reality principle by having the space that is denoted that we're able to play with. And inside of that reality, that's not, the reality principle goes away. But we step back out, we rejoin the reality principle. The imposter philosopher wants to be inside of that and take what is in there and throw it externally and utilize the laws of science, the way science operates, the effects of science, the effects of the intellect, to undo the reality principle outside of it. It is the inversion of Baudrillard. Baudrillard had one of my great lines that I've always loved is people go to Disneyland so they can pretend the rest of the world is real. There's so much in that sentence, but that is, to me, what he's talking about, what Klossowski's writing about here, that you go into the space that, oh, this is imagination. Anything can go. There's no reality, that But the thing to remember is that the rest of the world also doesn't exist in that same sense. It's also, the rest is fake. It's such a good it's such a good line from Baudrillard, but that's the thing that he's playing with here. This is the goal, the experimenter who is also the seducer or the tempter, the one who runs this dangerous trial and lures others into it. Imposter is the name for it that's probably the most honest, because what this imposter philosopher is doing is passing off the suspension of reality as reality itself. Using science to throw things out. Give me 2 seconds. So it's the specifics around it is particular. Using the methods of science. We're talking about Nietzsche here, and we're going to be getting back to it. And the next paragraph dives into this a lot. But remember, Nietzsche, in trying to explain the vicious circle, has taken a lot of tactics to do that. One of those is the scientific explanation of taking within and then throwing out the parts that he finds and utilizing science to do that, using the methods of science inside of the circle to expel the fakeness of the rest of it and to make people sort of break from the reality principle, break from their ideological hold, or however you want to phrase that. That's the methods of science. It's not using science, using the methods of science. We'll get to it. It's the next paragraph actually talks at length about this, and we'll be getting to it. So I'm going to kind of hold on answering that as much as I love you, Anton. As much as I love you. The imposter philosopher would be like, have you all heard of neurolinguistic reality tunnels? No, almost, but not quite. To abolish the principle of so-called reality, it is enough to draw the final consequences of physiology, even if this means denouncing the mystifying monopoly of the intellect, whose censure still keeps the methods of science within the limits of this principle. Okay. Let's maybe break this up, actually. God, it's such a long sentence, but we're going to try. To abolish the principle of so-called reality, it is enough to draw the final consequences of physiology. Okay. The method for the abolition we're talking about here is physiology, but it's physiology at limit. If everything physiologically, everything thought by you, everything valued by you, every truth that you hold is ultimately simply from an economy of drives and economy of wills, right? Of these impulses that are within you, then reality as a fixity dissolves purely into interpretation, right? Then I think that follows nice and cleanly. The final consequences of physiology is kind of the point. There's a reason he's got like the scare quotes, even though the PDF didn't fully pick up his consequence of physiology. That's like the thing he's doing here. It's way past the clinical sense of the physiological of Nietzsche. That's not what he's talking about here, right? We're way past that. This is metaphysical demolition, right? Nietzsche has, and again, this book is about Nietzsche, despite the 2 paragraphs seeming to lead in a million directions. Nietzsche tried to have a natural interpretation of the eternal return. He tried to do a scientific version of it. Scientific. That thing I'm pointing at, you know what I'm saying. I'm just going to keep going. It's all overreach, and it's all been sort of preloaded in the book so far, right? In chapter 4, if health and disease, like health and sickness, vary only in degree, if they aren't different kinds, if they're just the same thing, then there's no stable normalized state that can be a measuring rod. Because if it's all just, there's no, oh, that's what healthy looks like. Well, that's sick. But then it's only relative to the other pole. You can't measure a thing. You can't measure a thing this way. This is not how measurement works. That's the thing, right? So this final consequences of physiology can't actually deliver a fixed criterion for any of this. Physiology here is invoked to abolish the reality principle as being without criteria itself. Yeah. And this is exactly what I said with my neo-linguistic reality channels. It's close. It's close. Even if it means denouncing the mystifying monopoly of the intellect, whose censure still keeps the methods of science within the limits of this principle. Yeah. I think that actually just continues. I don't really have a lot to add at that point. Sorry, 2 seconds. Yeah, I think generally that's, yeah. Even if this means denouncing the mystifying monopoly of the intellect, whose censure still keeps the methods of science within the limits of this principle. So, okay, we're going to just doodle for a second because I'm going to just rethink my version of this, actually. Sorry, everyone. So, to abolish the principle of the principle of reality principle, the idea that things are real, that there is a real world that is stable, that is unchanging, that is the backdrop of everything. It is enough to draw the final consequences of physiology, taking it to its extreme, saying these, like as I was saying, it's the impulses and everything. If everything is just the drives, then ultimately it's purely about interpretation. If it's about interpretation, then we end up in kind of that unmeasurable space. And the weird import that sort of happens there is that there's no fixed criterion that can be delivered. There is no final bit. It puts you in that space of there's no grounding. There's no grounding that's the phrasing I was looking for. There's no grounding in this. There's no grounding in this. Right? And even if it means denouncing, so you draw the final, even if it means denouncing the mystifying monopoly of the intellect, whose censure still keeps the methods of science within the limits of this principle. I'm going to put a pin in this one. We're going to come back to it. Because I'm trying to work through exactly what that last bit means. And it's whose censure still, I have what I have written down, and I think I'm wrong. I'm not saying it again. I haven't said it, but denouncing the mystifying monopoly of the intellect, whose censure still keeps the methods of science within the limits of this principle. Man, that sentence throws me for a fucking loop. We'll just, for now, it's fine. It doesn't matter, but we'll get there. Next paragraph. If anyone has any ideas, you're free to, by the way, just tell me. I'm not going to turn them away. That's for fucking sure at this point. No? That's okay. It's a lot. You have to denounce the reality of the methods used to deny the reality principle. I mean, I think this is, I mean, you're hitting on why I'm like, so let's just walk through it in step 1, 2, 3. It is enough to abolish the principle of reality. It is enough to draw the final consequences of physiology, which I laid out. And doing so means denouncing the mystifying monopoly of the intellect, whose censure still keeps the methods of science within the limits of this principle. So the methods of science, the way that things are taken, measured, and specified, and that there's, and it's, he goes over this earlier in the book, but it's the idea that there is a stable thing to measure against. Think about temperature, for example. There is no such thing as like a comfortable temperature. There is no such thing as like Fahrenheit and Celsius all have these really insane stopping points. People laugh about Americans having Fahrenheit where it's like 212 degrees. What the fuck? Why is that boiling? 32 is freezing. Yes, it's stupid. But also 0 and 100 being freezing and boiling, also really stupid. Kelvin would be the thing. There's no motion, 0. That's where you start, and then you make your way up. That, again, it's all about placing these things inside of their own fixity. That, oh, the reality is this is the temperature, even though what we're doing is we're literally denoting a measurement of a very weird particular thing, the motion of molecules of what? Expansion of mercury, or like temperature is fascinating, but there's no fixity behind it. Yet it seems like there is. It seems like we're finding that, or we're building on that, at least in some way. The methods of science keep us within the reality principle, that there is a reality we're able to grasp. But we get to the end of physiology, we take it to the ridiculous degree, we find that next step that breaks it, but still maintains it. It's, I know he talks about this again later. I'm just trying to like work through. It's just a great sentence. Let's get to the next paragraph, and I'll just fucking stop because I'm just going to rabbit hole otherwise. Let me take a drink of my energy. I think Anton writes, is it taking under suspicion that reason is the one and only thing to try to figure out what's really out there, and it requires grounding axioms, and there are none? Yeah. Celsius is just convenient for human scale for normal human conditions on human planet. Well, sure, but that's a weird fixity too. That's kind of the point, right? That's kind of the point. And 92, that is how I feel right now. God, stop deleting your good shit. God damn it, 92. All right. Next paragraph. If phantasms arise as unintelligible signs, it is not some kind of moral censure that is responsible for their sterile manifestation, but their coincidence with the reality principle. Art is itself an accomplice in this censoring, insofar as it acts only within its own limited sphere. Science, for its part, explores the universe and life without ever drawing the slightest consequence for human behavior with regard to the reality principle. The fact that science is essentially an institutional principle dictated by reasons of security and for the gregarious continuity of existence, this is, once again, what forms the background thought of this project of philosophical imposture. I mean, that is actually a really good way to put all of this. That is a really good way to put all of this. To be very fair, that is a very good way to put all of this. Let's do it. If phantasms arise as unintelligible signs, it is not some kind of moral censure that is responsible for their sterile manifestation, but their coincidence with the reality principle. Okay. Why do phantasms stay barren of meaning? Why do they stay unintelligible, unintellectable? Again, unintelligible. These are linked words. In the French, it reads very clearly about the intellect, science. Why are phantasms unintelligible? Now, the first thing that would be said, anyone who's in the Freudian, Lacanian repression, say, sort of space of psychoanalysis, you would say, oh, it's because they are being morally censured. Our understanding of the world is preventing X, Y, and Z. You understand the world, and so therefore you don't want to directly deal with the way things are. There's the symbolic, all of these things. Klossowski's refusing it fully. Phantasms are sterile because they actually coincide with the reality principle, which is, by the way, this is straight up also anti-Oedipus. This is why ideology is like not a use. Like this is it's such a good sentence. Phantasms are in coincidence with the reality principle. The frame we have that certifies the world as real, things as real, what we determine as real, is very much the same exact thing that neuters them. It's not a moral policeman of the superego or even the ego. Honestly, it's none of those things. It's the very frame of reality as such that neuters them because they're fully in coincidence with it. This is why the imposter we're talking about here is targeting the reality principle and isn't targeting morality, because morality is not the point. It's not that, I mean, at one point it was. This is now a very different thing. It's the reality principle itself. And to continue. Boop, boop. Art is itself an accomplice in this censoring, insofar as it acts only within its own limited sphere. Let's change colors, because these are like sort of separate thoughts, but they make the same fucking point. Science, for its part, explores the universe and life without ever drawing the slightest consequence for human behavior with regard to the reality principle. That's so good. I mean, we're going to do the next one too. Why not? Fuck it. The fact that science is essentially an institutional principle dictated by reasons of security and for the gregarious continuities of existence. We'll get to the last bit as a final point before we move on. Art and science, the pink and the blue here, there's almost two complicities that we're talking about. Art is complicit in the censoring because it stays within the magic circle. It stays within the space of play. It respects the territory and the border that it was given. Right? Disneyland has an exit and respects that. Art has its frame. Video games have their computer monitor. Movies have their screen. They have their limited sphere. They stay within it. They're complicit in that censoring we're talking about here. Right? It's self-containment allows the reality principle to govern everything outside the frame. Science is complicit almost in the opposite way, I guess, right? Art stays in its space. Science explores the universe, like Carl Sagan and Black Science Man and all these people, right? That's what it does. But it doesn't draw out the slightest consequence for human behavior with regards to the reality. It brackets the so what we live for. That's what it does. It brackets it and closes it off. We have these two basic sides of it, and they're both complicit in the same thing, in the same process. Why science does this is kind of the point at the very end here. As I read it, I will just get all the last point in here too, because this is once again what forms the background thought of this project of philosophical imposture. The fact that science is essentially an institutional principle dictated by reasons of security and the gregarious continuity of existence. That is the punchline. Gregarious, that of the herd morality, herd existence, the species, the us at large, the royal we, however you want to talk about that thing. And so he ends, the imposter's entire project has this. That's it. As its background thought. That's the point. Science serves the survival of the herd. The imposter means to turn science's methods against the survival function. And again, that doesn't mean trying to kill all of us. Survival function is a very particular thing that, again, Nietzsche saw and understood. We have a drive towards survival that is more successful, but that drive towards survival that made us as animals more successful also shapes how we understand and see the world. That's kind of the setup. What is art? We went through that, actually. We went through that, I think, actually, pretty well. Could restate the reality principle people in the back. Definitely not me. If I were to say, hey, come back to reality. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I'm referring to a weird amorphous space of shit. I don't know how else to put it. Everything's real. Here's what's real. What's real? What do you determine as real? That's the reality principle for Freud. How do you determine what's real? If just in your head, take a second and go, hey, what's real? And you're like, look around, you're like, oh, I read, this is real. And that's it. That's the reality principle. The reality principle is this idea that there are things that are real and things that are not real. And how we delineate and how we set those up is like the foundation of the reality principle. And it's Freud, and it's important. Freud's work that goes over it is the two processes or the two systems of mental thought. God damn it. Where he talks about the parts of it. The reality principle being one. Very, very important. The point of this is to talk about how we understand what is real versus what is some kind of dualism. I mean, so Zizek talks about, and it's not my favorite, but let's just talk about ideology for a moment. The way that people look around the world and how they understand it, what is around us? What are we able to lean on? What is the thing we can ground ourselves in? That tends to be reality. This is what we sort of view, but nothing's real. The table here, I'm able to lean on it because it has a slightly denser atomic structure than the air around it. And my hand is too dense also to pass through it. There's things that can change, but it's the idea that there's a real world, a real space, a thing that is the foundation of all. And for us, as Freud talked about it, sort of for us to exist, we have to have presumptions of that reality exists. The reality principle is this, that we have things we can lean on. I think it's a clumsier version of Kant's understanding of like Cinnabar and how we come to understand and the syntheses that way. I think it's a clumsier version of that, honestly. My opinion, just my opinion, but that's just me. But it is saying there is a reality. And Klossowski's like, that's the thing we're kind of here to try to fight against, to be frank. Does that make sense? Because, like, what reality does in this sense also is it, and we will get to this in about 2 seconds, and you'll see, again, a lot of stuff from Anti-Oedipus here. Try not to bring it over. But reality gives us goals. It is understood intellectually, right? This is the thing that simulacrum does. And the way that things operate and how things work, it's going to be really important to sort of make our way through this. I mean, I'm just going to dive in because of that. To fix a goal, to give meaning, not merely to orient living forces, but also to elicit new centers of forces. This is what the simulacrum does. A simulacrum of goal, a simulacrum of meaning, which must be invented. Invented from what? Well, the phantasms of the life of the drives, the impulse as will to power already being the first interpreter. Okay, this is going to be a heavy Nietzsche shit here. This is going to be so much heavy Nietzsche shit. Okay, to fix a goal to give meaning, not merely to orient living forces, but also elicit new centers of forces. This is what the simulacrum does. A simulacrum of a goal, a simulacrum of meaning, which must be invented. Remember, simulacrum, the term, means willed. It is willed image, not the image that grabs hold of you. It is the willed image, the made image that is there to imitate, to give, to try to create a facsimile of the phantasm, the image that has grabbed you. And again, place yourself in this timeline of how these things are created. You are grabbed by an image and then you speak it. You were grabbed by an image and you paint it. The simulacrum is taking the obsessional image that has seized you, that is welled up from the drives, and making something from it. The simulacrum is the productive job. It's productivity. It's production. Big deal. All of it's production, but this is like literally made new as a thing. It is not simply to like orient living forces, which is again, the phrasing he's got right here. It is not merely to orient living forces. People often talk about a goal being laid out or a meaning being laid out as, oh, I am taking the forces that are there and I'm giving them, like, I'm just showing what they're doing. I'm orienting stuff that's already in that direction. I'm in line with my impulses by blah, blah, blah. Like that. No, not merely. Sure, you're trying to do that. Yes. But the second part of that is kind of this super, super big deal. It is also to elicit new centers of forces. So it isn't just taking energy and force and pointing to stuff that exists, pointing to stuff that exists. It is actually eliciting new forces into being. Goal and meaning, which is what this is about right here. Goal and meaning are things that are not discovered. We don't magically learn about them. Oh, look, I figured out what it is. That's what it was the whole time. So that's what it was. Sorry for my AO readers. That's a bit of a callback. That's not it. They're invented. They're created. They're created. This is what the simulacrum does. A simulacrum of a goal, a simulacrum of meaning, which must be invented. That's the deal. This is like, there's no pre-given goal. So goals must be fabricated. They have to be fabricated. This is why the eternal return, as we've discussed so far in the book, has to work as a selective doctrine. And it does this through the simulacrum, not through anything given to it. It has to make its way through that. And then, of course, it must be invented. But invented from what? Well, the phantasms of the life of the drives, the impulse, as will to power already being the first interpreter. This is Nietzsche. This is super deep Nietzsche. Good Nietzsche, by the way. This is like super good Nietzsche. Okay. The impulses, the drives. These are the will to power. Nietzsche and Klossowski. Klossowski's reading Nietzsche in this way. He is attaching, when we talk about impulses, he means will to power, right? He's identifying them with that. And with that, once that's done, will to power as a thing is interpretation. It is not brute force pushing. That's not what it does, right? Every drive, every impulse, before any intellect or conscious mind is involved in any of that shit at all in any way. At all. It's actually reading the world. Reading's probably too intellectual. I need to remove the intellect from this. Okay. I'll just use how Nietzsche talks about it. We went through this as chapter 2 and 3 of this book, where he goes a lot more into this. But the idea is that when we are seeing the impulses go out and about, the impulses actually are able to sense or experience being resisted, right? It's able to understand that it's being appropriated, not intellectually, but it's able to feel that. It's able to do that. It's able to have a perspective on both of those things. There's no such thing in this world as raw, uninterpreted material somewhere down below. Spinoza's God is at the bottom, and that's a deeply interpreted thing. Everything is already coming at us, either the interpreter or the interpreted. And that thing is what the impulses are. So the phantasms that are being talked about here, that the simulacrum is going to be drawing on, are already the interpretations that the impulses have built. That's this last line here. From the phantasm of life of the drive, the impulse as will to power already being the first interpreter. So, as we've been talking about the reality principle, this is basically eliminating the reality principle. There's no base layer of an objective reality that we're all within. It is interpretation versus interpretation ad infinity, all the way down to the fucking infinity, never touching bottom, ever. Is the Kant's reality principle? Yes. Basically for Lacan, he was like the real, that objective thing that is there, that is just what it is not part of the symbolic or the imaginary order. It is actually outside of it, because once we aren't able to directly interface with it. Children can, some animals can, plants do, like that existence. Lacan saw that. But this is, again, blowing that out of the water. It's saying, hey, the impulses all the way down are actually already interpreted. They're all interpretations or interpreter all the way down. So he continues. This one's going to take a while. I'm already apologizing to everyone. It might be objected, however, that if the fluctuations of intensity in the impulses are necessarily inverted by the intellect in accordance with a meaning and a goal, the guarantors of gregarious security, it goes without saying that the herd's will to power would win out over all the other impulses. How can we fail to recognize that the intellect and its categories are the organic products of this primordial impulse, of the conservation of the species, and that if there is a phantasm here as elsewhere, it is one that has managed to produce its own simulacrum, the most efficacious simulacrum of humanity, from which human behavior has created for itself a whole set of diverse spheres, all of which are so many aspects of the reality principle, namely the demarcation between acting and non-acting. Now, knowledge itself, initially contemplative and theoretical, then increasingly experimental, is also an interpretive will to power that in each case reinvents the real in terms of its own modes of apprehending its objects and then of manipulating them. It is here that two wills to power collide, the gregarious will to power and the will to power which, through individual initiative, breaks with gregariousness. Okay. It might be objected, however, that if the fluctuations of intensity in the impulses are necessarily inverted by the intellect, in accordance with a meaning and a goal, it goes without saying that the herd's will to power would win out over all the other impulses. Okay. The intellect, right? The conscious existence that we have as a thing, the intellect, always inverts the drive's intensities into a stable meaning and goal. It always does this, right? Those stabilizations are the guarantors of gregarious society. They're things that keep society able to function. We live in a society, more or less as a sentence, actually. We live in a society, right? That's the thing. The challenge is the way that he's written it here. The intellect is itself, and should be considered itself, also an organ that the herd grew for its own conservation. This is a really great sentence, and I'm not sure I can actually explain it without just ruining it. I will try. Because he says it really well right here. It's in this. How can we fail to recognize? Obviously, the intellect and its categories are the organic products of this primordial impulse. Obviously, the conservation of the species, the intellect and categories are the organic products of that impulse, the impulse of species survival. This is, again, just super Nietzschean. This is crazy Nietzschean, but of course they are. Why do we think that our understanding or the way we angle things or condition reality fundamentally itself is not a byproduct or productive element of the impulses that have gotten us to here? We've got to here. We have survivorship bias. We should not assume that the shit we have is what everything just naturally has. No, we've survived. We've survived because of these things. And so the organic products of this primordial impulse are the intellect and the categories. So it's a deck at this point of cards that is fucking stacked against us. Well, against not us. It's actually stacked super for us. We are collectively a deck of cards stacked against the impulses. The will to power of the herd, right? That's the only apparatus for making meaning at large. Because the code of everyday signs, the way that communication works, I need to speak to you in ways that the herd can understand. You are the herd. You are the herd, right? So if I'm doing that, I have to utilize terminology and setup that naturally works for the herd. That's the thing. Since it is where the apparatus for making meaning comes from, it should always come out on top. It should always come out on top. It goes without saying the herd's will to power would win out over all other impulses. Noel says, so is the idea here that the drive to understand reality through science is actively destructive to the idea that phantasm... let's not think of them as separate, like, elements. And that they're like one is directly opposed. I'm going to speak of it that way because that's the language we're using. But sort of just realize that our existence, the way that we're able to talk about things, the moment that is leading to this is right now, as you're understanding, the moment you have of understanding this as I'm talking, the moment you have of watching me or failing to understand, whatever it is all of these impulses that are yielding this turn from a lot of directions. And so the herd's will to power, which is that of making meaning at large, will always come out on top. It seems like it will always come out on top. I'll come back to this because I think it's an important line. Just follow for a moment. No, just follow for a moment. We're getting there. Yeah, I think we'll go with that. Yeah. Okay. Yes. How can we fail to recognize that the intellect and its categories are the organic products of this primordial impulse, the conservation of species, and along with that if there is a phantasm here as elsewhere, it is one that has managed to produce its own simulacrum, the most efficacious simulacrum of humanity, from which the human behavior has created for itself a whole set of diverse spheres, all of which are so many aspects of the reality principle, namely the demarcation between acting and non-acting. So, reality, as we grasp it, as you grasp it, as any of us grasp it, is itself a simulacrum. And it is the most efficacious, the most efficient, the most extraordinary simulacrum humanity's ever created. And it was created created via behaviors for itself from these diverse, incredible places to create categories, to create these things. Now, the herd historically, of course, has won. Its victory trophy is the real that we are experiencing. That's the thing it's doing. The simulacrum of the real that we're experiencing, we believe we live in reality. Good job, herd. Basically, like herd gave us that. It won. That's the thing. This is Freud's demand that the mind always bends towards reality. That's the reality principle, right? But it's not bedrock. It's not actually that this is bedrock. Klossowski's reinterpreting it through Nietzsche here, basically saying that this reality, as we understand it, this principle of it, is actually just a very, very extremely successful simulacrum. This phantasm, this image at large that we live in a knowable world, became simulacrum and succeeded so fucking completely that we mistake it for a pre-given everything. And he says, the thing that is real, the demarcation between acting and non-acting. Reality is fundamentally, and I love this definition he's giving here, reality is the line drawn that determines or counts some things as action and some things as non-action. It's the border of efficacy. Right? So our reality we live in is already a simulacrum. We're there. You're there. Even if I tell you, it doesn't matter. But you have it. It doesn't matter. This is part of the productive experience of being a human, more or less. And again, presuming that the rest of the animal kingdom has any concept of what reality is, again, well, it would be, that's worth a conversation, I guess, in and of itself someday. But that's not really where we're at, to say the least. And he continues. Now, knowledge itself, initially contemplative and theoretical, then increasingly experimental, is also an interpretive will to power that in each case reinvents the real in terms of its own modes of apprehending its objects and then of manipulating them. This is science, the methods of science. Increasingly experimental is a great phrasing. Again, this is not about discovery. Knowledge, science is not about discovering something, that it's about understanding. It's interpretive as a thing, right? You follow everyone? I hope everyone follows that. Hope everyone follows that. Because this is just Nietzsche. Like, this is beyond good and evil shit, right? Physics is itself interpretation, right? Chemistry is interpretation. It's not text that is there waiting for us to find. Okay? That's not the deal. Science is just another interpretation. For sure. That's the deal. That's it. That's basically it. It interprets, manipulates, and plays with this. And that's where we end with this last little bit. Boop. It is here that two wills to power collide. The gregarious, I'm going to actually do this slightly differently. It is here that two wills to power collide. The two wills to power, the gregarious will to power, and in opposition to that, the will to power which through individual initiative breaks with gregariousness. The cancellation of waves as they sort of play with each other. The way that the impulses hit. Here is where the wills of these two wills collide in this place. Okay? It's a big deal. And it's said very cleanly here. But it's a really interesting setup. The two wills to power collide. And that's for me the line that hits. It's not that these two wills to power coalesce. That's not the setup here. It's not that these two wills learn to work together, or that the one will destroys the other, or like it's not any of these moralistic claims or plays. Again, this is why it's reading on Nietzsche. It's the elimination of the morals or ethics of this in any way. We're going to be coming to political, but this is like a big deal. One force doesn't fully cancel the other, but they it's not a total negation. These things are local and they're constant. They're happening right now for you and me, and all of this is the two wills to power are constantly hitting each other, canceling each other out. It's not a global, purely affirmation or negation ontology here. Okay, that's not the setup. It's exceptionally local. This is real winning and losing in this collision. Now that one, now this one, now that one, now this one. It is not it's grand scale. That's not the setup. Okay? We're going to keep going. He's going to bring all this back around. Don't worry. Maybe next week. I'm not sure if it hits today, but he does bring all this stuff back around. Now, for this impulse to knowledge that tries to intervene and reinvent, where does the real begin and where does it end? The more science explores, the more it becomes aware of its own ignorance through what it knows. the more the supposed real resists it as an X. That's algebraic. That's just so you know, it's just an algebra variable, an unknown, the transcendental object X. This is Kant as a thing. It's not X marks the spot. It's not pirate shit. None of that. I mean, I don't need to. It's one sentence. I'm not going to go over this and highlight it, but the X, the thing here he's talking about is the algebra of the unknown. This is making references into Lacan as well and a handful of others. This is the chaos. This is the chaosophy, to be very particular. X is going to be the chaos of the chaosophy, but we're not quite there yet. We're getting there. If the reality that is experienced is the herd's simulacrum, then what the fuck keeps resisting? What is the force, the counter force to that? Because if the herd has survived, and it has, and it's able to do this, then wait, you experience it. You know you can walk outside today and you're not worried about whether gravity is going to fling you into the sun. Great. Reality is reality. You lean on it. So what is the force pushing against this? What is the thing that is resisting this? That's the question. What is the thing resisting science or knowledge or the totalization of things? Right? Following? Everyone good? How you guys doing? Anyone? Everyone here? I'm hoping everyone's just generally here. Just as a thing, that would be lovely. We're going to be going into the next little passage, which is significant. And it's going to be a lot of Nietzsche. This is it's going to be such a fucking long, shitty paragraph. I'm not sure if we're going to make it through in a way that I end up, I don't know, we'll see. We'll see where we end up. We're just going to be reading. We'll come back through. You'll see here, you can see this. This is the paragraph I'm dreading right now. It's one big fuck. Nietzsche has aphorisms, and then he has fucking aphorisms. God damn it. So I'll do my best. Okay. For Nietzsche, however, it was the gregarious impulse which, in science, had resisted him as the reality principle, the limit point at which knowledge opens onto chaos and where the species is destroyed. Did not Nietzsche repeat many times that the notion of this abyss as truth was unassimilable to the function of living, that the term truth was merely an error, indispensable to the maintenance of a certain species of living beings? But what does the security of the species matter? Okay. The rest of this is a Knockless fragment. He's asking, Nietzsche tried to do a scientific explanation of the eternal return and the vicious circle. And it was a spectacular failure. It really was. We went through it. You can go back and if you're joining us, we are in chapter 6. There's been a lot of reading before this. Go give it a shot. But that failure had resisted him, and it resisted him as the reality principle, the limit point at which knowledge opens onto chaos. And again, the reality principle is this idea that we can eventually know everything. You can learn everything. Maybe not one person, but we can know how everything works because we can eventually understand what reality is. We're just learning and discovering reality. And that's not really what's happening here. Not for Nietzsche. And his quotes, did not Nietzsche repeat many times that the notion of this abyss as truth was unassimilable could not be assimilated to the function of the living, that it was sickness, that it was illness, that it was destructive, poison. The term truth, an error indispensable to the maintenance of a certain species of living beings. The will to truth for humanity is what he's referencing here. But what does security of the species matter? All right, time for some Nautilus. At bottom, science seeks to establish the way the human being, not the individual, feels in relation to all things and to itself. Hence, it seeks to eliminate the idiosyncrasy of isolated individuals and groups, and thus to establish the persistent relation. It is not the truth, but the human being that is known in this manner, notably in all the epochs in which it existed, which is to say that a phantom is constructed, emphasis added by Klossowski, and that everyone is constantly contributing to it in order to find out that which requires our unanimity, because this would belong to the essence of humanity. In doing so, we have learned that innumerable things were not essential, as has long been believed, and that in establishing the essential, we proved nothing concerning reality except that the existence of the human being up to that point had relied on the belief in this reality, such as the body, duration, substance, etc. Thus, science does nothing other than seek the process that has constituted the essence of the species, which tends to render the belief in certain things endemic and to eliminate the incredulous so as to let them perish. This is all one paragraph. I'm just going to keep going. The acquired analogy of sensibility as to the species, the feeling of time, what is large and small, becomes a conction of the existence of the species, but has nothing to do with the truth. The insane, the mentally deranged, the idiosyncratic do not prove the non-truth of representation, but its anomaly. It does not allow the masses to live. It is also the instinct of the mass that reigns in the domain of knowledge. The mass constantly wants to have a better knowledge of its own conditions of existence in order to live longer and longer. The uniformity of feeling, formerly sought in society or religion, is now sought after by science. The normal taste for all things is established. Knowledge, which rests on the belief in persistence, is in the service of the crudest forms of persistence, the mass, the people, humanity, and it tends to eliminate and kill the more subtle forms, the idiosyncratic taste. It works against individualization, against any taste that is the condition of existence for a single individual. The species is the cruder error. The individual, the more subtle error, which comes later. Let me state that again. Sorry, it's an odd intonation. The species is the cruder error. The individual, the more subtle error, which comes later. The individual fights, that should be fights, for its own existence, for its new taste, and its relatively unique position in relation to all things. He holds this position to be better than the general taste, which he distrusts. He wants to dominate, but then he discovers that he is himself something that changes, that his taste is changeable. His subtlety leads him to unveil the secret that there is no individual, that at every moment he is different than at the preceding moment, that his conditions of existence are those of innumerable individuals. The infinitesimal moment is the reality, the higher truth, a lightning image springing out of the eternal flux. He thereby learns that all knowledge which enjoys knowing rests on the crudest error of the species, on the more subtle errors of the individual, and on the most subtle of all errors, that of the creative instant. So did anyone disagree that Nietzsche is fucking psychotically good at writing? This is like the shit he decided not to do shit. This is Nautilus. These are like notes of shit. This is the stuff he went, it's only kind of good. I don't know. It's a lot. We're going to go bit by bit. Let's talk through kind of what we're meant to get out of this for Klossowski and how he's framed this. The thing that stopped Nietzsche, the wall he hit within science, trying to do this scientific explanation of the eternal return, which is when this was written, by the way, right around this time, is all like right around this. He wasn't hitting a wall of reality that, oh, hey, you just can't, some things just can't be explained that way. Some things just, it's the reality. That's just written. No. It was the herd, the gregarious. Because science looks neutral. It looks neutral. But in fact, it's not. It is incredibly committed, specifically via the reality principle, especially to the herd's demand to survive. That obsessional image of survival that we experience as a humanity thing. That's the thing. If you push knowledge beyond that, you reach chaos, the unformed flux, the X. It's the supposed real resists it as an X. You reach that X as a thing that is chaos. It's the opening of things onto chaos. Within chaos, there's no species. There's no herd. Everything's destroyed. It's eliminated. You cannot live in undisguised chaos. So he says, and he's got a really great little phrase here. The term truth was merely an error indispensable to the maintenance of a certain species of living beings. Us. He's talking about us. Like, we invented truth because it's indispensable to us. That's the us. We did this. It's the set of useful errors that we have. Useful errors. I fucking love that. It allowed us to keep living. Like, it allowed us to keep living. These impulses that have been imparted on us allow us to be here today. They're very much the same ones also that are basically destroying us. It's hilarious that way. We live in poetry, but that thing ends with the question, and it's the contempt of the survival concept. What does the security of the species fucking matter? Fuck the species. And so we go in. Nietzsche opens really simply here. I'm not going to reread all of it. I'm going to try to do more of a large scale conversation around it. Because like literally I could spend 3 weeks going over this one paragraph. It's too dense. Maybe I'll note, here's the stuff I think that matters as we kind of go. Science seeks to establish the way the human being, not the individual, the human being, not the individual, feels in relation to all things and to itself. Hence it seeks to eliminate the idiosyncrasy of isolated individuals and groups, thus to establish a persistent relation. And that's probably the last bit there. It's going to be a persistent relation is the goal of it. This is beautifully, so plainly said. It's so plainly said. Science is not after truth. That's the broken version of this. It's after consensus. It's after consensus. It's after establishing, hey, how do humans in general work? What are leaves? Well, what leaf? Which one? No, we're just talking about leaves. We've eliminated all the special things that make every single leaf on any given tree completely unique in and of itself and a generative element. And what we're doing instead is we're measuring out, these are leaves, this thing. We're eliminating all the stuff that made it interesting, that made it unique, that made it individual. And we're making it a big, giant thing so we can understand it. Everything belongs to this thing. The species. So we end up not with an inquiry into the world, right? It's a portrait of the average human sensibility of things. Josh just says, isn't there a contradiction between Nietzsche saying truth is an error for the survival of species and his opposition to Darwin's claim that survival is the primary drive? No. Not as I read it. It is not. Nietzsche's qualms with Darwin are actually really fascinating because it's an extremely nuanced stance. For Darwin, not really actually Darwin, but people who read Darwin and talked about like survival space, the species wants to survive. It's not that the species wants to survive. It's that the impulses that build up the species do survive. So the ones that do survive are the ones that last, which means that survival is built in. It isn't a goal, but instead built in. It's survivorship bias of drive, more or less. It's not that we humans want to survive. We don't. Take a look around. Duh. We don't want to survive. But the things that have enabled us to survive are within us. And that's what Nietzsche's claim is. It's not that it's a primary drive to survival. It's that these systems and the interplay of all of these things put us in a position where the human is the one who survived. And so as such, we look back and we go, oh, well, obviously this is what you need to survive. And we wanted to because we did. And it's like, okay, no, stop that. And that's actually your quote. Everything that lives is exactly what shows most clearly. It does everything possible not to preserve itself, but to become more. Yeah. We've mistaken one thing for another. So the scientific method is to describe that which has survived. In the most broad sense possible, yes. I don't mean in response. I mean, that which has survived, we need to flatten out as much as possible and eliminate edge cases and understand, oh, it's these things. This is the average of the things. That's the thing. It's the average human sensibility. He uses the phrase idiosyncrasy here. The idiosyncrasy of isolated individuals and groups is to be eliminated. That's the point, right? A single creature or drive, and all of them, by the way, all of them are individuals, every single creature, even the people who do their best to prove that they aren't. They are very much that. But their idiosyncrasies need to be eliminated as much as possible. This is how science functions, by the way. Like, this is it's not bad. This is not a judgment on science or being anti-science at all. The reality of how things work in this way is this. It is fundamentally against the singular, the thing that cannot be shared, that cannot be communicated at large at all. It's noise that needs to be scrubbed out. The chaos of noise that has to be scrubbed out for science to be readable. Hey, generally speaking, penis, vagina, baby. Yeah, but some women, they can't have, and then there's some men, they can't, and then, no. We don't care about those. This is how the species works at large. Well, yeah, but there's exceptions. I don't care about those. Shut the fuck up. We're talking about how the species works. That conversation, that's science. That's science in the crudest way possible, but that is science. It sucks. And it said cleanly, it is not the truth, but the human being that is known in this manner, notably in all the epochs in which it existed. I love that a lot. And he continues, which is to say, and this is the emphasis is on Klossowski putting in here, which is to say that a phantom is constructed, that Everyone is constantly contributing to it in order to find out that which requires our unanimity, because this would belong to the essence of humanity. Phantom, and it's really interesting for Klossowski to translate it this way, right? This is not phantasm. He didn't, do this in the French, and the English here. I would have loved to have had a footnote here, but it's fair. This is not the phantasm. Okay. Nietzsche's phantom is something a little bit different. It's a fabricated composite of a thing, more closer to simulacra. It's human nature. It is the reality of things, the reality principle, whatever. That's the phantom that is constructed. Okay. It's a specter that helps everyone sort of build, because it allows us to contribute to things we can agree on, our unanimity. The constructed is actually, like, if there's a part that is really important to sort of be really specific, it is the constructed line, I think, here. The phantom is constructed. It's not phantom or phantasm. That's not what is happening here. Okay. Sounding more and more like the Peterson-Harris "what is truth" debate, buddy. This is literally sounding nothing like those two morons. I have no idea. Phantom is model. Phantom is model is probably the better way to put it. If phantom is a literal German word, like this, it's phantom is literally a word we took from German. Like, this isn't a word that like crossed over. Phantom is the original German word. And, it is the model without substance as a thing. Like, it's translation. Once you start getting into this shit, is fascinating. But your brain stops being able to like look at things like, I don't know, like I used to. I used to be able to enjoy stuff like this in a different way. But the phantom is constructed. The phantom at large, the thing. That everyone is constantly contributing to it in order to find out that which requires our unanimity, because this would belong to the essence of humanity. That's what feels most given to us is that which is most thoroughly manufactured and constructed and produced. Right? Klossowski, just a few moments ago, we read the section where he talked about reality is the most efficacious simulacrum in humanity's history, something like that. This is him layering this on. The constructed phantom for Nietzsche is playing in that same way. Okay? So the given of the given, the surviving of survival. It's not far from that. Not far from that. Yeah. In doing so, because this would belong to the essence of humanity, in doing so, we have learned that innumerable things were not essential as had long been believed, and that in establishing the essential, we proved nothing concerning reality except that the existence of human beings up to that point had relied on the belief in this reality. Okay. When science gets to the point of nailing down those things which are essential, the hyper commonalities of things, it's actually not proving anything of the world. It's not. It's proving things within measurements. It specifically, like we were talking about human survival as a thing. The only thing it really proves is that human survival has depended on believing in certain fictions. We believe in our own body. That helps us. Doesn't mean that the body is real, but that useful fiction is. This is just gay science. The life is no argument. We have arranged for ourselves a world in which we are able to continue to live. We create bodies. We create the planes of existence, causes and effects, motions and rest, form and content, duration, substance, all of these things. They're all useful errors, errors that we found that we could not have lived without. And the great part, thus, science does nothing. Actually, I want a different color this time. We're going to go with blue. Science does nothing other than seek the process that has constituted the essence of the species, which tends to render the belief in certain things endemic and to eliminate the incredulous so as to let them perish. It's so great. Science continues. Science builds the very process that built the species. That's what science does. Science is the formalization of that thing. It makes certain beliefs endemic, and endemic meaning universal and total and never leaving us. It's endemic. It's a great word. Right? It's really great. Yep. But the incredulous, those who don't share the belief, perish. Knowledge is not liberation from the herd. It is the herd's most refined tool for enforcing conformity. Yeah. Yeah, and actually, that's kind of where he goes. I'm just going to continue. The acquired analogy of sensibility as to the species, the feeling of time, what is large and small. The acquired analogy of sensibility, good sense, common sense, all of that. Did my mic go bad? Something wrong with my mic? Okay, good. The analogy of sensibility becomes a function of existence of the species. That can't be the right word. Give me a second. Yeah, I don't really care. We're just going to keep going. And I need to stop rabbit holing on things. Existence of the species, but has nothing to do with the truth. The good sense and common sense is useful for the existence of the species, but it has nothing to do with the truth. The insane, the mentally deranged, the idiosyncratic do not prove non-truth of representation, but it's anomaly. It does not allow the masses to live. Now, this is very much the same kind of thing that you can misread when you start reading Anti-Oedipus and people go, hey, you should just be schizophrenic. And that's what Deleuze and Guattari want. You could also do the same thing here. That which is deviant from this, that which is considered insane or mad or deranged or awful, this does not refute the picture the herd has. These people are not more true. Schizophrenia is not more true. That which is counter to this claim of truth or the species is not more true. They're simply anomalous. They can't be scaled up into a shared condition that works for mass survival. That's it. So saying that which is sane known versus the insane and individual or edge case or whatever is not truth. This is all about livability for the mass. Truth is not the arbiter for anything. Do not try to be insane. Do not laud the mentally ill. Do not laud the non-mentally ill. These are not the points. These are not the points. It's the singular case is the thing which the survival machine must expel from itself, more or less. It is also the instinct of the mass that reigns in the domain of knowledge. The mass constantly wants to have better knowledge of its own conditions of existence in order to live longer and longer. The uniformity of feeling, formerly sought in society or religion, is now sought after by science. Go to the next page. The normal taste for all things is established. Knowledge, which rests on the belief in persistence, is in the service of the crudest forms of persistence. I love this. The mass, the people, and humanity. Okay, so he's going to say this explicitly in the next couple sentences, and I'm going to prefigure this, I hope, to make it through this a little easier. There are 3 tiers of fiction, more or less, that he's sort of building at this point. Okay? And they're all errors, fictions, phantoms, whatever. Okay? The core error, and I'm just going to point them out as we go. The core error, the species is the cruder error. The individual is the more subtle error, which comes later. The coarse error of the coarse error is that of the species. There's no such thing as species. There are only similarities found within individuals. It's from the same notebook. I know that's what Nietzsche's writing about. The individual is an error that is a little bit more granular, and it's later in the sense of like history of errors, right? Right? That thing, the individual, the thing that Nietzsche is apparently going to celebrate, is also a fiction, but it's a more subtle one. It's a subtle one. And then there's a weird shift that happens in the writing here because, again, I mentioned there's like the 3-tier structure of fictions. The species, the crude, the individual, the subtle. The individual fights for its own existence, for its new taste, for its relatively unique position in relation to all things. He holds this position to be better than the general taste, which he distrusts. Oh, yes, I have good taste. Other people are fools. I know so much more than everyone. I'm so much smarter. I am a unique individual. Yes, we're all unique individuals. He wants to dominate. But then he discovers that he is himself something that changes, that his taste is changeable. His subtlety leads him to unveil the secret that there is no individual, that at every moment he is different than at the preceding moment, that his conditions of existence are those of innumerable individuals. The infinitesimal moment is the reality, the higher truth, a lightning image springing out of the eternal flux. Does anyone have an idea of what this could be? Anyone? Do you know what that anyone want to take a guess? Oh, that's right. The eternal return. Hey, look at that. Look at that. We knew we'd get back to it eventually. We have to always. So the individual in a herd. And again, all of these are pressures fundamentally. Right? The individual pressing their own shit into whatever subtlety, realizes there is actually, that they are a fiction. That's a fiction, that there is no individual, that he is already someone else versus what he was. At this very moment, his conditions of existence are actually those of innumerable others. So what is real is not the person. Instead, what is real is that infinitesimal moment. That's it. That's the real. the lightning image. I love that phrasing. The snap. It's the flash, the thing. The self in this dissolves into momentary intensities. This is why, like, Klossowski's quoting this. This is an extraordinary way of stating what the eternal return is, and that the vicious circle is that loss of personal identity. The creative instant. Just the phrasing of this, because he's about to use the phrase creative instant. It's such a fucking good thing. That's what he ends the line with. It's a fucking crazy, wonderful bit. Because the individual thereby learns that all knowledge which enjoys knowing rests on the crudest error of the species, on the more subtle errors of the individual, and on the most subtle of all errors, that of the creative instant. Even the creative moment that seems to escape the errors is error. God, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. We're going to go and we're going to close out the paragraph here, I think, because I'm going to have to bounce out of here in a moment, but I think we're going to finish out with the last little bit that is, I think, only at the base. Yep, that's it. So we come back to all of it. Science. Science can therefore be divided into two antagonistic impulses, both of which are expressed through it. On the one hand, knowledge. On the other hand, the instinct to conserve the species. But is not knowledge, for Nietzsche, the gregarious will to power that interprets the conditions of existence to conserve the species? Are not its experiments always determined by the same reality principle? What then can be said of its way of determining what is real? The philosopher impostor knows what he must hold on to in this crucial point, this limit point, at which his own intention of producing simulacra from the phantasms of the impulses coincides with the activity of the scientist. Okay. I fucking love this book so much. Science can be divided into two antagonistic impulses, both of which are expressed through science. On the one hand, knowledge. That's knowledge, the will to knowledge, will to truth. On the other hand, the instinct to conserve the species. This is the split science has. Science is not simply one drive, right? It's actually two fairly conflicting drives, frankly, but two very conflicting impulses. A drive to know and a drive to survive as a species. We just read this. I mean, again, he's just sort of summarizing, so this is not like all new shit as a thing, but this is driving through that. We read earlier, and it's the one line that has stuck with me from Nietzsche. Life is the condition of knowing. Erring is the condition of life. Nietzsche is very good, by the way. Very good. So basically you have to err to live, but you have to stop erring in order to know. So structurally, this stuff is at war. This is at war with itself. This is the individual split. But is not knowledge for Nietzsche, and he kind of drives through this, is not knowledge for Nietzsche the gregarious will to power that interprets the gregarious will to power that interprets the conditions of existence to conserve the species? I mean, we just read that, but in short, if knowledge is already the herd interpreting existence in order to survive, then these antagonistic impulses that we're talking about here aren't really two. Knowledge is more or less just species conservation wearing a really sophisticated mask, right? For Nietzsche, right? That's what we're talking about. Because again, we're talking about Nietzsche here. This is a book about Nietzsche, if you didn't know. Are not its experiments always determined by the same reality principle? even in Laboratory Life, Bruno Latour, easily, I think, his best book, Laboratory Life, basically is this sentence expanded out. Science, experimental science, the kind that is like the world-changing shit, right? The thing that, like, at one point, we've talked about a few of these, but hands-on intervention in the world, isn't it basically folded back to the herd as well? It's like we're fucked. They basically, Klossowski is trying to close out all of these things and completely leave us in a position of, again, being fucked. And it kind of ends with it, but we'll see that. What then can be said of its way of determining what is real? This is, if there is a question that is like going to be left standing as we leave today, this is the thing. If science is real, the real of experimental science, oh yeah, no, that's real. That's knowledge. We know this. If it's just the most efficacious fiction, right? The constructed phantom, then when science determines something is real, what the fuck is it actually doing? Oh, it's not discovering. It is manufacturing. And so we end with the last little bit. The philosopher imposter knows what he must hold on to in this crucial point, this limit point, at which his own intention of producing simulacra from the phantasms of the impulses coincides with the activity of the scientist. So this comes back to when someone was like, so wait, what do you mean using science? This is what they mean by using science. That's why I wanted to finish this section after you asked. This is the point. Okay? You don't fight science from outside of it. That's not what a philosopher imposter does. They find limit points where their own activity and the scientists are the same activity. So the scientists, not knowingly, generally, they are producing simulacra. That's what scientists do. They're producing modes of things or calculations and incredibly long strings of letters that are apparently very real in some way or whatever. They're trying to reconstruct the processes of biological or chemical or cosmological existence. They're imposing form on the flux. Now, what does the philosopher imposter do? Well, he produces simulacra from the phantasms of impulses. He makes wheeled images out of the drive's obsessional images. This is the interplay that's there. At the limit point, these are the same thing. They're the same absolute thing. They coincide in every way. So the imposter's foothold is not a separate faculty. It is not a heroic outside. It is the recognition that science is already doing what these guys are doing. They're inventing simulacra. Well, they believe it's simply mirroring what is real. The philosopher imposter is much more aware of it. The seam where science's self-misunderstanding is naked and exposed. That's it. I have to go. I've got a kid thing to do, and then I've got a dental appointment because I have a cracked tooth, and I have had it for 2 weeks now. So I'm actually going to be taking care of that today. I look forward to, I'm going to be streaming a little bit more in the next few days. Hope you guys will join. Thank you for this. If you like what I do, support it. Best thing you can do is join the QC and come and talk and do some readings. We got a few of them. Discord.gg/DGQC. Of course, if you have a few extra bucks, it doesn't hurt to toss them my way. If you can afford a cup of coffee a month, head over to patreon.com/DGQC and do that. It'd be lovely. Let me see if anyone is. I don't even think anyone's ever live now. This is afternoon readings. Leave us with very few people to send anyone to, but let's see where I can send anyone. I'll send you over to, no, that's scheduled. That's terrible. No one's live. Well, that sucks. So be it. Thank you, YouTube, for joining. As always, it's been a riot, and I love you all, and I will see you all soon enough. Don't say anything. We may not be clear. I can't tell if we're clear. I hate this. I hate YouTube. Got it. Good. We're